Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, dear friends of Ukraine, please join me in welcoming back to Davos the President of Ukraine, Mr. Zelenskyy. I think you can hear from the warm applause that people are very much looking forward to hearing you speak, Mr. President, but also to greet you in the warmest way, welcoming you back to our annual meeting. We are really now approaching 3 years since the beginning of the full-scale invasion of Ukraine, the largest European conflict since the Second World War. Nearly 1/5 of Ukraine's internationally recognized territory remains under occupation. The scale of human suffering since the 24th of February 2022 has been tragic. Almost 40% of your population requires humanitarian assistance. Millions face food insecurity. Deliberate attacks against your country's energy infrastructure expose Ukrainians to freezing temperatures. Attacks against civilian infrastructure, including schools, hospitals, have caused huge physical and mental harm on those that are most vulnerable. In the face of this tragedy, thanks for your leadership, Mr. President, you and your country remain steadfast. Your country remains firmly on the European path, having been granted EU candidate status. Mr. President, we truly hope that we will see the war come to an end in 2025 through a just and lasting peace that restores Ukraine's sovereignty, a peace that ensures future generations will never have to know the horrors of war. The world is eager to hear from you on what lies ahead for Ukraine in the coming year. Welcome back to Davos, Mr. President.
Thank you so much. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to talk about the future of Europe with you, which basically means the future of most people here. Right now, all eyes are on Washington. But who's actually watching Europe at the moment? That's the key question for Europe, and it's not just about ideas, it's about people, first of all, about how they will live in a world that's constantly changing. 20 hours ago, President Trump's inauguration took place in Washington, and now everyone is waiting to see what he will do next. His first executive orders have already shown clear priorities. Most of the world's now thinking, so what's gonna happen to their relationship with America? What will happen to alliances, to support, to trade? How does President Trump plan to end wars? But no one is asking these kinds of questions about Europe, and we need to be honest about that. When we in Europe look at the United States as our ally, it's clear they are an indispensable ally. In times of war, everyone worries, will the United States stay with them? And every ally worry about that. But does anyone in the United States worry that Europe might abandon them someday, might stop being their ally? The answer is no. Washington does not believe Europe can bring them something that is really substantial. And I remember last year's Asia Security Summit in Singapore. The Shangri-La dialogue, and their representatives of the United States delegation openly said their top security priority is the Indo-Pacific region, the second is the Middle East and the Gulf, and only the third is Europe. And that was under the previous administration. And will President Trump even notice Europe? Does he see NATO as necessary, and will he respect EU institutions? Ladies and gentlemen, Europe can't afford to be second or third in line for its allies. If that happens, the world will start moving forward without Europe. And that's a wall that will not be comfortable or beneficial for all Europeans. Europe needs to compete for the top spot in priorities, alliances, and technological development. And we are at yet another turning point, which some see as a problem for Europe, but others call a chance. Europe must establish itself as a strong global player, as an indispensable player. Let's not forget, there is no ocean separating European countries from Russia. And the European leaders should remember these battles involving North Korean soldiers are now happening in places geographically closer to Davos than to Pyongyang. Russia is turning into a version of North Korea, a country where human life means nothing, but they have nuclear weapons and a burning desire to make their neighbors' lives miserable. Even though Russia's overall economic potential is way smaller than Europe's, it produces several times more armor and military equipment than all of Europe combined. And that's exactly the path of wars Moscow chooses to take. Putin signed the new strategic deal with Iran. He already had a comprehensive treaty with North Korea. Whom do they make such deals against? Against you, against us, against Europe, against America. We must not forget about it. It's not by chance that are their strategic priorities, and our priorities must match the challenge in politics and in defense and in economy. Such threats can only be counted and only counted together. Even when it comes to army size, Russia can field about 1.3, maybe 1.5 million troops. We've got more than 800,000 in our military. Second after us comes France with over 200,000, then Germany, Italy, and UK. Everyone else has less. This isn't a situation where one country can secure itself alone. It's about all of us standing together to mean something. For now, thankfully, the influence of Iran's regime is weakening. This gives hope for Syria and Lebanon, and they should too become examples of how life can recover after war. And Ukraine is already stepping in to support the new Syria. Our ministers have been to Damascus, and we've launched a food aid program for Syria called Food from Ukraine. And we are getting our partners involved to invest in these delivers and in building food production facilities. And Europe could totally step in as a security donor for Syria. Time to stop getting headaches from that direction. And Europe, together with America, should put paid to the Iranian threat. Next, right now, it's not clear whether Europe will even have a seat at the table when the war against our country ends. And we see how much influence China has on Russia. And we are deeply grateful to Europe for all the support it's given our country during this war. But will President Trump listen to Europe? Or will he negotiate with Russia and China without Europe? Europe needs to learn how to fully take care of itself so that the world can't afford to ignore it. It's vital to maintain unity in Europe because the world doesn't care about just Budapest or Brussels. It cares about Europe as a whole. And we need a united European security and defense policy, and all European countries must be willing to spend as much on security as it truly needed, not just as much as they have gotten used to during years of neglect. If it takes 5% of GDP to cover defense, then so be it. 5% it is. And there is no need to play with people's emotions that defense should be compensated at the expense of medicine or pensions or something else. That's really not fair. We have already set up models of cooperation for Ukraine's defense that can make all of Europe stronger. We are building drones together, including some totally unique ones that no one else in the world has. And we are producing artillery together and in Ukraine, and it's much cheaper and faster than in any other country in the world. And investing now in Ukrainian drones production is investing not only in security of Europe, but the ability of Europe to be a security guarantor for other vital regions. And we need to start building air defense systems together, ones that can actually handle all types of cruise and ballistic missiles. Europe needs its own version of the Iron Dome, something that can deal with any kind of threat. We can't rely on goodwill from a few capitals when it comes to Europe's security, and whether it's Washington, Berlin, Paris, London, Rome, or after Putin kicks the bucket, some imaginary Democrat in Moscow someday. And we need to make sure no European country is dependent on a single energy supply, especially not Russia. Right now, things are on our side. President Trump is going to export more energy. But Europe needs to step up and do more long-term work to secure real energy independence. You can't keep buying gas from Moscow while also expecting security guarantees, help, and backup from the Americans. That's just wrong. For example, the Prime Minister of Slovakia is not seeking access to the US gas, but does not lose hope to enjoy US security umbrella. And Europe must have a seat at the table when deals about war and peace are made. And I'm not just talking about Ukraine here. This should be the standard. Europe deserves to be more than just a bystander. With its leaders reduced to posting on X after an agreement has already been made. Europe needs to shape the terms of those deals. Next, we need a completely new, bolder approach to tech companies and technological development. If we waste time, Europe will lose this century. And now Europe is falling behind in the development of artificial intelligence. Already, TikTok's algorithms are more powerful than some governments. Already, the fate of small countries depends more on their owns of tech companies than on their laws. Already, Europe is not leading in the global tech race, falling behind both America and China. This isn't some minor issue. It's about weakness, first technological and economic, then political. And Europe is often more focused on regulation than on freedom. But when smart regulation is needed, Brussels hesitates. We should ensure maximum tech development in Europe and together make all significant decisions for the whole Europe. From weapons production to tech development, Europe must lead. And Europe must become the most attractive market in the world, and that's achievable. And finally, Europe must be able to guarantee peace and security for everybody, for itself, and for others, for those in the world who matter to Europe. Europe deserves to be strong, and for this, Europe needs the EU and NATO. Is this possible without Ukraine and without a just end to Russia's war against Ukraine? I'm certain the answer is no. Only real security guarantees for us will serve as real security guarantees for everyone in Europe. And we must ensure that America also sees us as essential. For that to happen, America's focus must shift to Europe so that one day in Washington they will say all eyes on Europe, and not because of war, but because of the opportunities in Europe. Europe needs to know how to defend itself. Hundreds of millions of people with Europe to see its landmarks, to learn from its cultural heritage. Millions in the world dream of living like the Europeans do, and will we be able to keep it and pass it to our children? If we in Europe can answer positively, America will need Europe as well as other global players. Europe must shape history for itself and its allies to remain not just relevant, but alive and great. Thank you. Slava Ukraini.
Will you speak in English or in Ukrainian?
Oh, if I can Ukrainian, if I can use Ukrainian, it's good.
Your English is also becoming so good, huh?
But my Ukrainian is better.
Yeah. My Norwegian too.
If you want to hear how it sounds.
We are all in your hands.
Thank you so much. Yes.
So I'm asking the question. So there is a headset. So give people time to take it on because they shouldn't miss any of the nuances in your answers.
Thank you so much. How many questions you have?
Depends on how long your answers are. We have a backup.
You have only one question?
Oh no, I have a few.
Okay.
You know, the war has almost gone on for 3 years now, and you know, it's incredible how you are holding up. But of course, the pressure has also increased, as you said, from Russia and their allies. I think we're all also wondering how your latest military strategy is, and also how the current state of hostilities are. You last summer decided to do the incursion of Kursk, the first time since the Second World War another country have taken a piece of Russia, but at the same time we know that Russia is pushing very hard in Donbass. So what is the current state of hostilities, and what is this part of the strategy that you can share with us here today?
That's really not a simple question.
No.
If I'll answer with all the details, maybe it will be only one question, really. But okay. Дякую за.
Thank you for this question. First and foremost, I'd like to say that we are still in the Kursk region and our military is there. The Russian Federation lacked forces to push us out of there. Today they have more than 60,000 troops there, the Russian military, on that particular axis. Apart from that, there have been 12,000 North Koreans, 4,000 of whom have died. And that was Putin's strategy to drag one more country into war. I'll be frank, I did not. He signed something with Iran, and we did not, for the moment, find anything prescribed in there that can drag Iran into war. But at the same time, I sincerely believe that Iran has been dragged into this war, since they've started to hit our infrastructure, our hospitals, schools, with their long-range drones. And they have also issued licenses to produce those drones in the territory of Russia. So I'm very grateful to our military that they are on the Kursk axis and that they have dragged some of Russian forces from the east to that axis. And also Russia wanted to occupy the city of Kharkiv. And that region is at the moment under our control. The people are living there. It was very dangerous, the occupation of Kharkiv, because now approximately 1.5 million people live there. That is a lot of people, and they are shelling it. And the people there, when you look at them, it's just admiration, because they work there under shellings. You know, they are working. They do not leave their city. They are very patriotic, very strong. We are very grateful to them. So the Kharkiv operation failed, Putin's operation. We managed to stop them. Then he wanted to occupy territories in the north again. He started the invasion from the north, invasion to Kyiv, almost 3 years ago, as you have mentioned. And here he wanted to start with the north again and to capture a big city of Sumy. And then we were forced to deliver a preventive blow on the Kursk axis, and we have created a buffer zone between the Russian forces and our city of Sumy. And that is why now Sumy is under our control. In the north, there are no Russian and North Korean troops. They are all pulled to that magnet to our military on the Kursk axis. In the east, we have a difficult situation. There is the biggest quantity of Russian forces, maybe the most well-trained. They are on the east. They are pushing on a daily basis. You know that we had a big problem with at first was the delay in the Congress voting for the support, then the supply was low on, and even the last year supplies, they are still on the go, I'll be frank with you. Yes, our guys are fighting, yes, everything is very uneasy there. On the other axes, the Russians have failed. What is the strategy? What is the strategy?
Yes. From here.
The strategy is that we must approach any sort of diplomacy that will lead, and I'm sure of that, to the end of the war. The issue is what this diplomacy will look like. If it is strong, and after this diplomacy and the negotiations, Ukraine has strong security guarantees that will prevent Putin from coming back with war again, then it will be a lasting, just, strong peace for Ukraine, for Europe, as I have said it, and to be honest, for America as well, for the whole world. But if the security guarantees are weak, if there is uncertainty and only words, then you will get from Russia also only words, and they will again come back with war.
Mr. President, in your speech, you were underlining that Ukraine is also playing a role as a kind of a bulwark against Russia for the rest of Europe, and especially in some former East European countries, there is, of course, a lot of concerns for the future, taken into account what has unfolded in Ukraine. And you argued that for Europe, this should be the first priority. Then you said, for America, of course, they have a transatlantic ocean between themselves and Russia. But at the same time, we know, and you know, that American support is also needed, since they have half of the military capabilities of the world, so still a superpower. And I think we're all reflecting now on what will happen in Washington, D.C. In the coming weeks. You met Trump many times. It seems that you've established also a relatively good personal chemistry. But what do you think will happen in the coming year? Is there, because every war has to end, so now we're talking about the premises for deal. It has to be also future security for Ukraine and no new wars. So, a question, you think you are in a manageable situation now in the coming months, also with the new Trump administration?
Дякую за запитання.
Thank you for the question. First and foremost, I would very much want that everybody understands where we and Russia have been in 2022, where we and Russia and America and Europe are now. It seems to me that this technical data is important to understand how and which support, how and what it influences, and what are the risks for everybody else. If we recall the full-scale invasion by Russian Federation in 2022, then we absolutely know that the Russian military contingent constituted around 200,000 personnel. They have come from the north with this contingent, with missiles, from the south, from the east, yes, but they had around estimation 200,000 plus the separatists that have and unfortunately still now control parts of the east. I mean regions Donetsk and Luhansk, the parts of these regions that they control. It was very difficult for us without anybody's help, and I am very much grateful that America and Europe have then stepped in. But you must know that as of now 600,000, and to be precise 100,000 Russian military troops are on the territory of Ukraine. So that is 3 times multiplied than the contingent that invaded us in the beginning of 2022. So if somebody says that there is enough of aid, please compare what was back then and what is going on now. Back then, the America's aid was around 90%. Now, what our military has on the battlefield is 40% of Ukrainian-made supplies, 40% of the US, and around, so a bit more than 1/3 of the US, and a bit less than the US is Europe, and around 40% is Ukraine. So that is what we have now, and that is a huge difference. And when somebody is saying, how are you holding on? We hold on because of the serious increase of domestic production, and increase in production in Europe, and also increase in production in the United States of America. But that is not sufficient, because we have multiplied our increases. Europe did not follow such tempo, and I have underscored it in the speech. So it is very important to understand where we are, how to hold on without aid, and what Putin will do. Now look what he can do if there are no clear, strong security guarantees. He increased his production by multiple times as well. And I have given this example. He has more than 30 factories in military sector. Europe has 45, but he is producing almost 2 times more than Europe. So you understand that he is investing everything. He is investing everything into it. But Europe is not investing sufficiently, and that is also a fact. Despite the fact that Europe has more technological capabilities, that is not taken into account the United States. And when you don't have the strong security guarantees and the volumes of the aid decrease, we will be forced to count only on ourselves and Europe, and that is not enough. That is not enough. It's needed that Europe and US be in alliance. If he, Putin, increased his military grouping to more than 600,000 troops, how do you think, if there are no strong security guarantees, no NATO, no military contingent deployed, no long-range weaponry, no weapons on the territory of Ukraine, how do you think, if Putin comes back, he will definitely come back with the army 10 times more than the grouping he had in the very beginning of 2022, because it is already almost 4.5 times more than it was. And when he comes back with this grouping, why will he come back? For the full occupation of the countries that are former republics of the USSR, that is number one, and then he will do what he has done with our Crimea. He will be coming to other EU and NATO countries to stand there, to do these or certain, to issue these or those ultimatums, to make demands to the countries. Somebody will have to leave NATO, our Baltic friends, Finland, Sweden. He will be bringing us and you, everybody, to the world that lives in his head. This is what will be happening in case there are no strong security guarantees. One of the important questions that Putin will pose, and we will all see it, is to decrease the numbers of Ukrainian military by many times. You will all see that, because this is absolutely understandable. If we manage to make army 800,000 troops plus, it's understandable that we plus Europe, we are an army that is capable not only to withstand and to defend our borders, that is the army that is capable of repelling Putin. And he understands that. And the fastest way is to push the United States, that Ukraine is on the US, that Ukraine is not in NATO, and to push all the other allies that they push Ukraine, for Ukraine to decrease the army. This is what will happen. This is what he wants. I mean, this will not happen. We will not allow him to do that, but he will try to do that. And it seems to me the main strategy now with President Trump is that we really have good relations with him. But we nowadays have pragmatic times, and for us it is very important that excessive voices that are sometimes around President Trump, delivering disinformation or pro-Russian messages, for us it is very important that Europe is loud, so that there are more voices around Trump, so that he clearly understands the details and the risks that can be in the future, and very fast. Trump, he told me, and he later publicly stated it, he will be doing everything to end the war this year. And I told him that we are your partner. We have this war in our territory. We know all the painful points. We understand how painful it is for us We have lost our people. That is the biggest loss for us. We want to end the war this year. But not only with the word rapidly, but justly, first and foremost, in a reliable manner, for Ukrainians to come back home, to live in security, to work. And it seems to me that this is the most important thing. At least we'll be doing everything for it.
Mr. President, I just don't think there is a lot more to add. I
So
felt
it was not interesting, you see?
I was coming to that in the next sentence. I felt that the last piece was historic. I think you sent a historic reminder to all of us what is at stake. And I was thinking about what Winston Churchill once said, that the farther backward you can look, the farther forward we're likely to see. And I think if you have seen something in the past, you have a special responsibility for not repeating it in the future. And I think you feel here that there is a lot of support for you and your country in Davos. Thank you very much.
Thank you so
Mr.
much.
President.